Let's talk about the boss fight that happens around 45 minutes into PS4's God of War, since I've gotten quite a few requests to make this video. If you are very sensitive to spoilers, please click away, as I will have an in-depth video for you guys on combat and exploration. Okay, so if you're still here, it seems that Odin sends another god to go after Kratos and kill him. In fact, this god refers to Kratos as Death, the destroyer of worlds, which is a nice homage to this scene in God of War Ghost of Sparta, when Zeus is disguised as the Gravedigger.
By the gods, what have I become?
Death, the destroyer of worlds.
Odin spied a triptych revealing that a strange ash-covered warrior is in Scandinavia, and because he was such an avid seeker of more knowledge and wisdom, it was only a matter of time before he made the connection that this warrior and the destroyer of worlds are the same person. Last year's E3 trailer revealed that the Norse gods already knew about the Greek pantheon because there was a bit of overlap between their eras. There was also some overlap with the time of the Egyptian gods. The line about Greek gods being snobs was in reference to the way they were like politicians hiding on Mount Olympus in these rich marble structures manipulating the people below. The Norse gods on the other hand preferred to get down and dirty in Midgard, and the Greeks must have looked down on them for that reason. The one-shot camera wouldn't have presented a problem in this regard because we do not have to wait until Kratos arrives in Asgard to cross the gods in person. It's therefore safe to say that they are aware of the destruction of Zeus's kingdom and how it happened, but it must have been only recently when Odin put the pieces together to identify Kratos as the culprit. The latest chapter of the Lost Pages told us of how Odin was infatuated by Ragnarok, being consumed and driven insane by it. He obsessed over finding out ways to destroy the Jotuns because he claimed that they were the ones behind it. You can imagine how much hot water Kratos must be in then because of Groa's vision of Ragnarok, but Odin doesn't know that Kratos has a son, so he hasn't worked out the identity of the boy that was seen accompanying Kratos both in the vision and the triptych in Jotunheim. He must have been able to determine Kratos' whereabouts using his ravens Hugin and Munin, as Kratos frequently ventured out on mysterious long day hunts. The god that Odin sends comes across a clue that Kratos has a son, even though Atreus was probably hiding in the cabin while the fight was going on, and this will surely be reported back to Odin. Atreus later tells Kratos that he doesn't understand why a man attacked him at the house because he thinks they are nobodies, and Kratos lies, telling him that he knows nothing more than the vague explanation he must have provided before they started their journey to the mountain to scatter the mother's ashes. Deep down, Kratos knows why he was attacked, but he didn't discover the identity of this god by the end of the fight because he is always merely referred to as the Stranger. I'm guessing he gets away because IGN postulated that he might be the main antagonist of the game. We know that he is played by famous actor Jeremy Davies, whom you may know from TV shows such as Lost and Justified, and this definitely suggests that the Stranger will have a significant role to play, but I'm not sure that he will be the main villain. So first things first, how did I even arrive at the conclusion that this man is a god? Well, previews wrote of how this man physically gave Kratos a really tough time, who struggled as he traded blows with a godly equal. Kratos may be a bit older, but he is still a powerhouse, and even after the player uses Spartan Rage on him, the Stranger still gets back up to fight. Greg Miller of Kinda Funny went as far as to say that it was the best superhero fight in a video game ever, with structures around them all getting destroyed as a result of the battle. So now that we have established that he is a god, which pantheon does he come from? He cannot be a Vanir god because I think this game takes place during the Second Great War between the Aesir and the Vanir. The description of a piece of concept art spoke about gods fighting for control of Midgard in the present tense, and the truce they agreed on after the First Great War ended when Freya was banished by Odin. Furthermore, the Vanir turned to more subtle methods of combat, like magical spells, whereas the Stranger relied on nothing but brute force. Apparently this god was even capable of turning his skin blue, making himself invulnerable to the strikes of the Leviathan axe. This is big news because it connects him to the ice-infused humanoid enemies I spoke of in my analysis of the Lost Pages, who are also impervious to the axe. The stranger might lead a faction with these warriors as his followers, who trade their loyalty in exchange to being imbued with some of his powers. So which of the Aesir gods is it? It would have been dead obvious if it was Thor or Loki, so it's definitely not them, and I don't think it is Tyr either because the demeanour and provocations of the stranger simply aren't compatible with a god of law and justice. I watched an interview with community strategist Aaron Kaufman where the interviewer was under the impression that it was Balder, but this would be rather shocking to me if true. Balder was the god of light and purity, one of the most gracious of the Aesir and the most eloquent. This is in stark contrast to the way the stranger carries himself, and he doesn't seem like the type of god that the world would mourn if he passed away. For instance, there is a point where he tries to mock Kratos by telling him that he expected someone with his reputation to look bigger and more intimidating. However, all of Balder's characteristics were pulled from Snorri's Prose Edda, and there was a different account from a Danish historian at the end of the 12th century that Sony Santa Monica may have tapped into. According to this historian, Balder was an active fighter at one point and depicted as a sort of warlord. As a result, he could go from radiating light in Snorri's book to radiating ice to reflect this in God of War. I think it's unlikely that they'll take this angle, however, because a lot of what I've seen so far favours the more traditional interpretations. If I was to guess, I would say that it is one of Thor's sons, Magni or Modi. Magni in particular was the god of strength and brute force. There is a story in the Prose Edda that some could even interpret to say that he is even stronger than Thor, explaining how he would be able to stand toe to toe with Kratos if it was him. While we are on the subject of Kratos fighting Norse gods, I think it's very interesting to consider the question of whether any gods will actually die in this game because of how reluctant Kratos is to kill any. The battle described in this video is a fight for survival more than anything else. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Kratos didn't kill a single god in this game, and it would be a great way of flipping the norm for the series, especially on the back of God of War 3. There was a fascinating thread of conversation when Corey was featured on IGN's PlayStation podcast as he spoke of learning about dramatizing exposition from George Miller. It was to do with a play in which a woman refuses to answer the phone while the audience really wants her to, and she provides reasons why she doesn't want to answer despite the consistent ringing. I've been thinking about this more and more about how it could translate to God of War, especially when there are lots of questions to answer in regards to what's happened to Kratos after God of War 3. There might be a situation that Kratos is put in where he can make the killing blow on a god that has threatened the safety of both himself and Atreus, but refuses to do so, disappointing Atreus and maybe even the player. In the moment, Kratos explains of the consequences that he had to suffer as a result of his careless actions in Greece. He became cursed to walk the earth forever, haunted by nightmares and visions of his past, which are even worse than they used to be. I believe that he was cursed to walk the earth forever by Athena, and this is how she will feature back into the story. She was brought to a higher existence and became immortal herself, so it really isn't outside the realm of possibility. She knew more than anyone of how much Kratos wanted to be rid of his nightmares. It was his first request to her in the original game when she asked him to kill Ares. After he chose to sacrifice himself to give her power away to humanity, Athena must have decided that cursing him to live forever so that he is constantly haunted by the past would be the best form of punishment. Despite the boss battle happening early, it is not featured in the game's opening moments. The series staple of opening with high-octane action is another element that has been left behind in favour of moving forward, but I guess this fits with the more sombre approach to Kratos' character and where he is at in his life right now. Apparently the game opens with a solemn moment of Kratos talking to his son instead as they deal with the death of his mother, which many journalists described as a lot more emotional and impactful than what they were expecting. I don't really consider delving into these details to be ruining the game because the Lost Pages have been building up to something like this happening, and I still can't say much with confidence other than the fact that the stranger is an Aesir god. We knew that Odin saw images of Kratos before the events of this game take place, and that he would be acting through other gods by proxy. Stay tuned for my in-depth look at combat and exploration, and I'll speak to you guys again very soon.